All right, welcome to another week, another edition of 21st Century Rocker Mom podcast. I'm here with you this week. It's just you and me and my allergies and my shadow rolling down the avenue. It's been a fucking week. I actually debated even recording because I have been an emotional mess. I had a big loss in my life, someone who was really important to me, so there's a lot of dealing with that and loss and grief. And so this episode is brought to you by birth and death and everything, in between. As usual. Jeez, I spilled that all over myself. I'm going to crack me open a nice cold pop. I have one of my Refresco Mexican Coca-Colas from here. Oh my God. They're so good with that cane sugar. I shouldn't be promoting this. It's so bad for your teeth. After my previous career in the dental world, I shouldn't be having this because I'm not going to sleep. Not that I've been sleeping well anyway, as you know. As you know. It's kind of Refresco. I added some vanilla and we'll see what happens. I'm like mixing a drink here. It's got no booze in it because if you booze, you lose. And for me, like for other people, if they booze, they win. But for me, no. So we're going to talk birth, death, everything in between. So I will probably be upset. Who knows? It's a few weddings and like a million funerals and everything that's in between. You know, when you have like your gravestone, you think about it. And like on your gravestone, you have your epitaph, like the year that you were born and the year that you passed away. And then the middle, so for me, it would be the year I was born was 1983. The year I passed away right now is, question mark. But in the middle there, that dash in the middle is what everyone's like, 83 to whatever, or, someone born from 1922 and lived till 2001 or whatever. They lived a fucking long time, whatever. But what's that dash in the middle, represent? Is it from they just lived from this date and died on this date? No. You really got to think that dash in the middle, that's the part that's the everything in between part. And in these times, especially when you're dealing with big things like death, those are the things that we need to remember the in-between times. Remember that there wasn't just an end date or an expiry date to something or someone or someone's life. There was all that in between. Yeah, they were born and it's amazing that they came into this world and then they passed away, and it's sad, very sad and tragic in a lot of ways that they left this world too soon, or depending on what the circumstances are, it's really hard. And then we have, the duality of that. We have birth and all the birthing, all the birthing stories and all the birthing experience points. When you hear the word, when you have a birth and you hear the word, meconium, everybody, most ladies know what that means. I've had a couple of births. I've had 2 kids, obviously. So we're going to talk about that. We will talk about kids and C-sections and crazy things. We're going to talk about, near-death experiences, what people kind of describe. We'll talk about birth shaming and, and being child-free and what's that, people being shamed for, having birth and how they give birth. And also people who choose not to have kids and what my opinion is on that. So we're just going to delve, right into it. So I guess we'll start, with birth, because that kind of, in most people's opinion, comes first. So I have 2 kids, obviously. I have a little boy and a little girl. And the first birth my pregnancy was, I get really big with pregnancies because I am a small lady. I am only about 4'10", so I was huge. I was a big girl. I had to get taken off work early and everything. Not because I was just necessarily gigantic and I gained a lot of weight, but I was just super pregosaurus. So that was my first. And he ended up being an emergency C-section. So that was quite an experience because I went to birthing classes and everything. So I expected that to be I'm going to have a baby and it's going to be this beautiful experience and I'm going to just get this epidural and everything's going to be fine and he's going to latch to my breast and I'm just going to pull him out of me like a Kardashian and put him on and everything's just going to be so in a bathtub in the woods beside a tree with a deer and this was going to be my birthing plan, you know what I mean? It was This is how you planned it in your head with your first baby. No, that did not happen. There was like a mother and child like emergency. So I am in the delivery room and I am laboring. My partner at the time had gone to go get coffee because he was fucking, I don't know, doing what, I don't know. I was having a baby. I'm not sure what the fuck he was doing. But sleeping. My first birthing experience was not so great because a lot of your birthing experience has to do with your partner and your support system. And the first time I just did not have a good support system. It was really stressful. And then I ended up going into like distress and fetal distress, which was more concerning. My little guy's heart rate started to go into bradycardia, which is slow. And eventually that drops off the map. So they're like, we're just going to go and check you out in the OR. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, you're going to do a C-section, aren't you? And they're like, not necessarily. I'm like, so they're coming at me with all these things. And like, literally, I'm getting wheeled into the OR by myself. There's nobody else there because my partner is nowhere to be fucking found. I get wheeled into the OR. They throw up a drape. So this is what they do. So trigger warning if you don't know what a C-section is. A cesarean section when they open a woman up surgically through the abdomen to remove a baby because it's in distress or the mother's in distress or both of them are in an emergency situation or it's a planned C-section. Maybe this woman has a medical complication or she's tiny or she couldn't have a baby vaginally. If you don't know what that is, this is what this is. It's just another way of giving birth, in my opinion. So, emergency C-section. So, the great thing about my emergency C-section was I knew someone in the operating room, one of the nurses. I turned to my right, and it was a girl that I had like gone to public school with, which was great. So, I knew somebody in there. So, the drape went up. I talked to the anesthesiologist. He was like, have you been put to sleep before? And I was like, motherfucker, you're not putting me to sleep. My epidural's working fine. Give me a spinal, top it up. Let's go get the baby out. Like, just get him out. So, they got him out in what seemed to be like 2 fucking seconds, but also like an eternity. And I had a friend who also had a C-section, and I remember her describing it as like when she got wheeled, and her first one was an emergency C-section. And when she first got wheeled into the operating room, she said she was really scared. And as was I. I was fucking freaking out because I'm like, are they going to knock me out? What the fuck are they going to do? She was awake, as was I. And she said this calm like washed over her when she went into the OR. And like her husband like had time to like scrub up and stuff and get in there. But like her husband was like hanging out with her. My partner was not. So I understand once the drape went up and I knew that the baby was safe. I knew he was going to be okay and I was going to be okay. Or so who knew. And I saw a face that like I knew. I barfed a bunch and like, honestly, they got him out, but they put this big drape up in front of you so you can't see what's going on down below there. But like, in essence, they cut you open while you're like wide awake with just like a drape in front of you that looks like a gymnastics poles with just like some cloths on it. And they take the baby out. I heard him cry. You feel like someone cut you open for sure. Like it feels like pressure, not pain. Anyone who's had like a tooth removed, like surgically, had any like incisions or had anything done under like a local anesthetic, where you've been cut, you'll understand of the feeling of like pushing, but not sharpness. As I just like punch my hand, pushing, but not sharpness. So that was Sir's entry to the world. He really wanted to come out and meet everybody. So he came out quick at 1:26 in the afternoon. And I remember just asking the doctors being like, is he still a boy? And I'm like, how many fingers and toes does he have? I just wanted to make sure he was okay. And he passed all the tests with all the flying colors and the APGAR tests and all the colors and shapes and all the good things. And eventually I got him because I was still like under anesthesia. When they put you under on your back, when you have an epidural, it starts going up and your chest starts getting really numb and you can't feel yourself breathe. So I had that. So that was interesting. I guess I'll use the word interesting if I want to be like super positive about it, but it was fucking scary, man. It was really scary. So they like wheeled me into recovery. Finally, I got to see my son, and he was just hanging on, and we cuddled and snuggled, and did some skin to skin, and it was amazing to have a baby and to feel that love. Like, I've never felt a love like that, except like with, like, at that time I had never felt a love like that ever. Like, I'd never experienced it like that. And then here comes this little person, this little human into the world, not a little adult, but just tiny little child, and you have so much love for this little person that you helped create, which is like astonishing and like really like weird for your ego, because like people want to have kids for all different kinds of reasons, but it usually involves like me because I thought I would be, you know what I mean? But it's so humbling that this little person grew inside of you and you protected them all this time. And here they are outside of your body and like in your arms. And it's terrifying and beautiful, you know, all at the same time. So that was the first baby. And then a few years later, I had a daughter. Like my daughter came along. Rob and I had Scarlett, and I decided to try something called a VBAC with her. I know it sounds like some kind of like reverse cowgirl craziness, but it kind of is. It's reverse like vagina craziness. It's a vaginal birth after a C-section. Some women can do it and some women cannot. Some women, it's recommended automatically if they've had a C-section, especially if it was a toughie, that they just have another C-section and have a planned C-section. And for most women, that's a really good plan, especially when your doctor recommends it. And I would say just go with what your doctor says, unless you're really militant. My doctor said it was safe for me to have a VBAC and try. So I was like, let's do this. So Scarlett, I had her birth was vaginal, obviously. Too much information. There's actually a video on the internet where you do not see any like vagina. It's just like a beautiful birthing video done by her lovely godmother, who was in the room actually when she was born. It was just myself. It was Rob. It was Scarlett's fairy godmother. And then we had like a doctor who was like a resident and a nurse. And they were very young. And I was kind of like scared because I was like, oh God, how many babies have you delivered? But we had the doctor of all doctors, Dr. Morenzik, in the hallway, kind of like, what's going on in all the rooms and checking in. So I felt pretty good. My doctor was like, I think she was having a baby herself, my OB. So she was not totally available, but the doctor I had was lovely. She was amazing. And the only thing is I had Scarlett. When I had Scarlett, I was laboring and I had my epidural, so I was comfortable. Like everything was like going good. And then all of a sudden one of the nurses was just like, meconium. And I was like, did I fucking hear that right? They call like meconium is when a baby has a bowel movement inside when you're laboring and in delivery. And the baby can aspirate that and breathe it in his lungs and get really, really sick. So they like called in a hazmat team in case like it happened, and she did it. And I mean, the good thing is she did not aspirate any of the meconium. The other news is she had the audacity to shit inside of her mother. That girl has the biggest ovaries of life. She is, oh my God, mad respect, Scarlett. You pooped in me. Hilarious. So when the nurses said meconium, I was like, okay, that's fucking punk rock. So this one's gonna be a feisty one. She's gonna be born with the fire. And she was. So I got all the birth experience points there. So then after you have a baby, like the vaginal way, they juice you, like squeeze all the juice out and all that stuff, and you have to get the afterbirth out and everything. And then they like stick you in a room. And at this point, like I was like, whatever, I'll share with the roommate. I don't need a private. I had a shared room with Harrison. And even though I was in the hospital for 5 days, like my roommates weren't super like disruptive. I did have one family that was like a lower German family that was there, and they had like a lot of family members. They were like straight out of condoms. Like honestly, I feel like all they did was like work and fuck, like in the fields planting, no electricity, like really lower German, like no electricity, things like that. I was surprised that they were in the hospital. They had like 1 million visitors a day. Like that was the only thing that was intrusive, but this was way before COVID and stuff. So, but I was like, it wasn't so bad even with a C-section when I had my first. So I was like, whatever, I'll just get a room to share after I had her. My blood pressure went up, which was crazy. I was supposed to go home, but they're like, actually, no, your blood pressure's fucked, so you got to stay here. I'm like, what? It's just like, it's ridiculous. I don't want to stay here. So I get into this room. And the lady beside me, my roommate, is like literally got a problem. Every 2 seconds, she's like beeping the nurse. Not because there's something wrong with the baby. She's like, oh, I spilled my coffee. So next, the nurse would come in and help her clean it up. Next, there'd be like another catastrophe. Like, I dropped my iPad. It was just like, Mom, I dropped my sandwich on the floor. I'm like, these are like 5-year-old fucking problems, even though 5-year-olds don't drink coffee. Like, even when my child was 5, even my one child that is not even 4 doesn't have these fucking problems. Like, people are self-sufficient when you teach them, and people are fucking lazy and entitled when you don't. So this is what I had to room beside. And then for some reason, this woman thought it was a great idea at like 3 o'clock in the morning when her baby couldn't sleep to throw on like Paw Patrol at full fucking blast. Brrr, Paw Patrol, Paw Patrol. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it was crazy. So it made my high blood pressure go just out of control. It made it go worse. So the doctors had to put me on more meds. That was cool. Then this woman had like 1 million visitors and also 1 million baby daddies. Like, I only have 2 like baby daddies. This woman had like, we were counting like 2 hands here. Like, I know she's just keeping the baby daddy population alive. I was helping in a small way, but this was the story of this baby. She just called him Baby Atticus, Baby Atticus. So I will never forget my brush with Baby Atticus, all her visitors in her room, eating hamburgers, like stinking up the whole town. So Rob, being the partner that he is, he was so good. While I had Scarlett, he just like held my hand, like even in labor. She came out like in 24 minutes. Like, she was out fast. He went and talked to the nurse and was like, listen, my partner cannot get any rest. How's her blood pressure supposed to get any better when we got this going on 24/7? And the nurse is like, oh, this person's got some serious issues. And Rob's like, yeah, we kind of guessed that, but wanted to try to be sympathetic. But this, you can only take so much you can take, especially with your family and a newborn child, right? You want to fucking speak up for yourself. So we just like, he's like, you got a private available? We'll just pay for a private. Who gives a fuck? So all of a sudden, it's like the middle of the night. All these nurses come charging towards me. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I'm like, are they going to take blood? What do they want? Do you want blood? Do you want urine? What do you want, nurses? No. They were coming to move me to the nicest private room. And the nicest thing about it is it was quiet for my daughter. She got to have a good sleep. She got to feed and have a good, latch and hang out. And it was quiet. Rob could actually get some sleep because he had to stay in the hospital. Like, this is again before COVID. And like, my mom and my sister look after my eldest, and it was so much of a game changer to be in the private room. So much more of a bonding experience, like with the baby too. And there wasn't people coming and going, except like the nurses, and they knocked and they were like cordial when they came. And I had one sort of nurse ratchet that was like giving me half of the painkillers that she should give because she thought like women should just experience how much birth hurts. That was not a nice lesson to learn, Nurse Ratchet, but at least I can tell like women that like vaginally or C-section, I don't care how you give birth, you count. Birth shaming fucking sucks. I got birth shamed the first time I gave birth. People saying C-sections aren't really giving birth. Yes, they are. And they're also like one of the most draconian ways to give birth. Very uncomfortable. Vaginal is giving birth. I don't care if you give birth in your living room, your bathtub, as long as you and your baby are safe. I don't care if you give birth in the forest on a fucking blanket where you're laboring. As long as you're comfortable and everything's safe and everybody's cool, great. Super good. No one wants to be the lady at the hospital who's sharing, the room with like the lady who's got a clueless husband and keeps taking the baby for a walk down the hallway and in the middle of the night and keeps setting off the fucking baby alarm, okay? There was a woman at the hospital who was that woman. I didn't want to be her, so that was not good. So between the populous lower German population now spreading COVID, but also at the hospital just invading my room, crazy old baby Atticus. 2 is wonderful. I love being a mom. I love everything about being a mom. 2 is a good number. Boy and a girl. What could you ask for? It's just great. I got 1 each. They're both completely different children. We got 1 mild. We got 1 wild. It's amazing, but it's super, super good. And then on the flip side, we have death. So this is something that I did not want to delve into for the show, but unfortunately is entered my life once again, and death, for someone like me, you'd think it would be easy, but it's not. It is exceptionally difficult for me to deal with, which most people don't understand because I have a very, very rational brain, worked in medical and these sort of thanatological fields before, but I have a very, very soft heart. And I have a soft heart for people, and I will always will. I will cry at the drop of a hat. Like, I'm talking like real emotions. I'm not crying just because everyone else is crying. I'm at a funeral. I'm crying harder than anyone else, but it just hits me really hard. And when someone passes away and when you do have a death, how important is it to have like a good support system and have friends or people or family. And I've had so many friends and family and people I don't even know just reach out lately. And I've spoken to a lot of people that have just said kind and caring words. Like, that is just something. People have sent flowers and reached out and sent DMs and dropped things off. And I am like eternally grateful. This past week, we lost my godmother, and I've spoken about her on the show many times. And I don't know what, I can't say what I want to say about my godmother, you know, during funeral times because of COVID and all those things. And this is one that I definitely wasn't ready for. My godmother she was something else. She was probably the purest soul I have ever met in my life. And I mean that truly and honestly, like just the purest soul. I never heard her say a bad word about anybody, never a soul. I never heard her say a bad word. She never drank. She never smoked. You know, my mom even told me, like, this is my mom's best friend when they were young girls and they were out, everyone was out with their boyfriends on a Friday night, or not going out partying, but going out like dancing and doing things like this and dating or going to the drive-in or something like this, the things that they used to do back then. My mom said, like, she'd be at home cooking and baking and sewing. She'd make her own clothes. It just really spoke to who she was. It wasn't because she was unpopular. It's because these are her interests and these are the things that she loved to do, and it showed. And boy, could she cook and could she bake. Every supper or gathering involved some kind of wonderful smorgasbord. She was like a superhero. A superhero. She was a daughter. Her dad's still with us. She is a wife, a devoted wife, an absolutely devoted mom and baba, and she was my fairy godmother. What can I say? She zipped me up in my first wedding dress, even though she wasn't super fond of the person I was getting married to. Even though she didn't say bad words, she just kind of went, you know, he'll never grow up, honey. But she zipped me up anyway. You know, she just put a smile on her face and zipped me up anyway. She was just that kind of person, you know. She taught me to always put a shake of salt in my coffee filter to remove the bitterness. She made the best coffee of life. I'd always sneak a sip when I was a kid over at their house, and I remember a lot of happiness in and around and about her. Any place that she was surrounded with happiness and lots of smiles and a lot of laughing. I can hear her laughing. That's what childhood happy memories are. And that's because of her. And that's what the in-between is. That's the in-between. These are the things that I want to remember about my aunt, what I call my auntie and who is my godmother. The stuff in your childhood that gives you, you know, good memories, stuff that you don't have to recover from, stuff that is so valued. And I'm so grateful that I had 38 like beautiful years with such a beautiful woman. I spoke to her on the phone a couple weeks ago while Rob was away for his shooting, before he had to come and quarantine and do all his hotel stuff. And we talked and she listened, and I sent lots of flowers that she could see. I'm not the kind of person who likes to send flowers to people when they pass away, even though I do send flowers because that is a respectful thing to do. You send flowers as the memory of the person. You send it for the person's family, in my culture at least. But I love to send, as a person, on a personal level, I love to send flowers to someone who is alive and who can enjoy them and fill their life with happiness. So she had called me to thank me for some flowers, which had astonished me because I saw her name come up on my phone and I went, what? Like, she's not doing well, she's at home, but she even thought to call and thank me. And I had left her a message on her answering machine specifically saying, hey, something's coming to the door for you. Let my uncle get it. No need to call and say anything. Just, I'm letting you know I'll get a confirmation when you get it. But she still called feeling the way she did all through that. So that, it just speaks volumes to someone's character. It just speaks volumes to someone's character. And she was there, through it with me through, everything, birthdays, anniversaries, marriages, weird band stuff, growing up, my parents' divorce, like my own, like getting divorced and getting split up and stuff like that. Like, after my first marriage, she was there for like literally everything. She's everything you'd think like a godmother would be, and even more like motherly. So I am really gonna miss every bit about her. I'm gonna miss her light most of all, and mostly her laughter. I have an eternal picture of her in my head, like always pulling something out of the kitchen because there's always so much food going around at her house, and I'm not going to let that, I'm not going to let that memory fade for me with her, because I think that just ruins everything. And I think in order for life to go in a circle like that, you really got to hold on to those in-between moments. And I'm sorry. I'm holding on pretty tight to that one, because in the last 6 months, we've lost about like 6 people, like right in our immediate family. And that's not counting people outside of our family, like friends and stuff like that. So it has been not good around here. But to lose my godmother was one that I was not ready for. And yeah, I don't think anyone's ever ready. I don't think you are. Speaking of being through many things, going through many things like the in-betweens, birthdays, opposite of death days, and when you leave this earth, you're celebrating the day you were born, and you come into this earth however you come into this earth. I had 2 come into this earth, and we celebrate a lot of birthdays around here. Rob's is really close to Harrison's, which is crazy. They're both in November, which is amazing, and they're like a week apart. Rob's actual birthday was my original due date with Harrison. Wasn't that meant to be? Ridiculous. It's awesome. So they don't celebrate together, because I think it's important to like celebrate your birthday apart, even though I like celebrating my birthday with my one best friend, which is really weird because our birthdays are the same. It's Mercedes. Our birthdays are the same, like almost like by 1 day and 1 year apart. So we always call it our birthday. It's just something like we've kind of always done. And while I believe like my kids should have their individual birthdays and stuff like that, but like I love that we call it our birthday. And I think it's like a special thing, and it's very loving, and it's very kind, it's very gentle. And like, I have a lot of homegirls that are born around the same time as me. Closest, they're Mercedes. Like for my birthday of course is in January. It's the 24th of January. So it's a winter birthday. So it was always like fucked. My winter birthdays were always hard. Because like, what the fuck do you do in the winter? I wanted to go like out and do something fun with my friends outside. Like, it's like, no, it's 1,000,000 degrees below zero. So we went like ice skating. But it was like my dad a lot who organized like what we did out. Especially if it was like tobogganing or something. I remember they took us for indoor golf. My parents took me for that. They let me choose a few friends. And we had a mall in London, the Galleria. It's still there. It's called like Masonville or Place, or no, not the Galleria. No, it was Masonville Mall. It's called CF Masonville now or something like that. Underneath that, there was by the elevators, there was a huge mini golf, like putt-putt place. And I'd go there for my birthday because we had to do something inside. So my parents would let me like pick a few friends, and we go to either mini golf or bowling, or sometimes we go like tobogganing. And then my dad would take us to like Kelsey's for like a brunch. We go like tobogganing early in the morning, and we go out for like an awesome brunch. And like when I was a kid, I'd like pile my plate high with bacon, like just to be like a real asshole. You could have as much as you wanted and no one gave a fuck. And it was cheap back then too. So my dad like pick 4 friends and they can come out for lunch or brunch, and we go tobogganing, make sure everyone brings their mitts and their hats, and he'd take us, and it would be a blast. And bring my sister. And then I remember one time we went as a birthday present as my party and like gift. I really wanted to go to like this place in town. It was called Fluffy's Pizza. It was like a big hairy deal to go there. And like every year I wanted my cake from the same place, Klein's Bakery on Hamilton Road in London, Ontario. A Black Forest cake from Klein's. It was boozy as fuck. It had real like liqueur in it, like kirsch. It was amazing. I'd get one every year. My grandparents would get it for me. My Oma and Opa would grab me a cake. And not have to get like a kid drunk or anything like that, but you could taste it a little bit in like the buttercream. But everything was homemade. So I got that. We went to Fluffy's Pizza. And the big deal of Fluffy's Pizza is you got to make your own fucking pizza for your birthday. So of course I went back there. And this is years ago. I'm like so young when this is. Like I'm like 9 or 10. And so I get to make my own pizza. So back then I'm eating all the pizza. So I make an entire pizza that's just like meat and cheese. The meat is bacon. The cheese is mozzarella. That's it. Like that's all it is. It was just layers of meat and cheese. The guy who was helping me in the kitchen was like laughing his head off. He's like, "You having fun there, darling?" I'm like, "Yep." The cook he was so kind, but he was so like, I think he was like kind of snickering to himself. Like this kid really likes bacon, obviously. It was just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. It was one of the best birthdays I had. The Pizza Monster came out. There was this thing called the Pizza Monster. They had a jukebox. You could put your quarters in. You could, pick the music that you wanted. They had like a stage you could dance on. So like my dad like rented it out. Either that or it was dead and no one was there. I'm guessing he rented it out. And I had my pizza party at Fluffy's and my friends came. It was fun. And then, like, as I got older, some of my birthday parties were, like, bowling and stuff like that. I remember after, like, loving bowling for a long time and getting into kitty, one year I got a bowling shirt while I was in kitty. We were in New York, and I got this bowling shirt. It was called the Devil Dolls bowling shirt. Like, it was not something I would usually wear because it was, like, bright pink, and it had, like, purple piping and stitching around it. But it looked like Laverne DeFazio, like it literally looked like a Laverne and Shirley shirt. It literally looked like Laverne DeFazio's shirt, but it was not. It was the Devil Dolls. It was my bowling shirt. I used to wear it all around high school. I used to love it. I fucking maybe thought I was Laverne DeFazio for a little while. Who knows? But I bowled in it forever. I even bowled like in a little bit of a league. I like to go to the bowling alley a lot. We had a bowling alley close to us. And I used to bowl a lot as a kid. Rob tells me he bowled a lot as a kid too. So I guess this is something that we never knew that we had in common. That I'm glad we're together and we can. So if we ever want to like bowl it up, that's it. That is a date night for sure. So that's a bowl of that. But discussing everything in between, it's hard when the everything in between stops. How do you deal with the fact that everything eventually, comes to an end, no matter when that is? I've got all my bowling and all my kitty memories and all my memories with, my godmother, my family, all different things, You got a bazillion memories and then, 100 million things going on at any given time. It's just life. You don't know when that's going to stop. You don't know when there's going to have to be like a funeral or, time just kind of stops, or different families and different cultures have different customs, When I pass away, I tell you, you won't find me in an old folks home or a hospital bed or nothing. I would want to come home and pass away on my terms and go the way I wanted to go. I wouldn't want to do that stuff. Maybe that's just the idea of it for me. The idea of mortality and death hit early on and super huge for me. I was super aware of death, and for all it's worth, more of a fascination of death. It was kind of like the frontier of like finality of something that I never like really understood. No one knows. I've heard like a lot about near-death experiences. I had one myself as a child. I almost drowned in my Nana and Pop's pool. I did something stupid like a somersault while I was like on a pool ladder and I got stuck. It's not even my parents weren't watching. They were right there. They were outside. But I panicked and like I was breathing the water into my lungs and scared the shit out of myself. So I almost drowned in my lungs, just being an asshole in the pool, but like, just little assholes drowning in the Thames River. Like, fuck the things that you do when you're a kid. But like, death really is the final frontier. Like, people will describe they see a white light, or they see loved ones, or they describe being told to go back, it's not your time yet, or whatever. I didn't have anything like that happen to me. I just had a lot of water going up, but that was about as close to death as I got, except for being under anesthetic and having a little bit of something that the doctors have now coined anesthesia awareness. I have experienced that. I talked about that on the pod before, I think. I'm sure I have. But I'm just at the age where, and I've talked to my girlfriends and my guy friends about this, where it's just like happening. Everyone around us is passing away. And it's not just like our parents and our grandparents and our aunts and uncles and people we thought of as like older people before. It's not that, because it's not old people. It's some of my friends are passing away. Like, I've had friends younger than me go already. Like, it's not a nice age to be at, this age for that. It's a wonderful age to be at in life. It's a wonderful station to be at in life, but it's not a nice time to be at in life for these kinds of changes. And no matter how prepared you think you are for these kinds of changes, you really can't prepare yourself. It's really hard. And now I'm really happy that there are things in this world like death doulas and people that help folks that are dying leave this world on their own terms with dignity. Because the thing about dying is, if you're going to die on your own terms, you want to die with dignity. And that's what these death doulas do. They are there to counsel you on your final wishes and your final way that you want to exit this world and whatever you want to do. Like, do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want a funeral at all? Do you want a celebration of life? Do you want to be flushed down the fucking toilet? Do you care? Like, do you want to die at home? Do you want to have your body displayed at home? Do you want your service at home? There are so many variables to how you can go. Do you want euthanasia? Are you suffering? What do you need? Because I think, you come into this world pretty quick, pop, you're just here, You should get, especially if you're suffering, you should have, in my opinion, you should have your absolute right to figure out how you're going to exit this world. So I think these death doulas and this new stuff with the death psychology and the psychology behind death and stuff behind it, and people assisting people and all the assisted suicide and things like this that can be made accessible to the people who need it, not made to get rid of our senior people. I'm talking make accessible to the people who need it. I think that's exceptionally important. What's hard has been explaining death to my children. It's hard to explain death to a child. How the hell do you do that? Over and over again. My kids now have lost their great grandma, who they, obviously knew as their ninnle. And so we had to kind of explain when she passed away. They just thought, she went to the hospital, she's going to come out. That's what most people think. They go to the hospital, you come out. It just, sometimes it does not fucking happen that way. And we just say, they had lost their dog, obviously. We lost Guinness earlier, last year, in December. We lost Guinness before my birthday, obviously, and that still it's horrid to be without a pet, because losing a pet is just for me, it was like losing a child. I had a dog before I had children. I cared for him like a child, stayed up with him, all night, like you do, worrying like you would with a child. The same old things you do with a child, you know what I mean? So they'd been reeling from that, and then, they lost their ninnle, and that for their 2 children, and especially for Rob and stuff, and for myself, that's someone that was so important in our lives and so integral to our lives. That was a giant fucking blow, and it came out of absolutely fucking nowhere. So they're reeling from that, in July, and then my godmother passes away, and that is someone they identify with as an aunt as well. And they call her auntie as well. And because she treats them like she treats everybody like you're her own, just like she treated me. That's why she was my godmother. Like, my parents made good decisions when when I was a kid. Godparents meant that if your parents kicked the bucket, this is who you're going to go live with. And living with this person and her family would have been something, because these are people that we call cousins. We're not blood related, but we're like best friend related. Her and my mom grew up beside each other. Absolutely. So I remember so many good times with my cousins. I remember, not getting in trouble for trying to go down the pool slide standing up. No, I remember being like, Tanya, get on your bum, sit on your bottom. You know what I mean? But I remember like epic Easter egg hunts at their house. A million fun summers swimming laps in the pool with my cousins. A lot of food. I remember a lot of food. It's been a week. Before all this happened, I was on the political trail. That's somewhere you probably thought you wouldn't find me. You won't find me there like all the time, but you know how I feel about fighting for certain rights and certain things, and how I feel like certain groups of people are getting fucked over royally. So that is, I can send the death to something. Death of being a fucking asshole. Oh my God, don't be an asshole. Just take your asshole part of you and just let it go. I mean, I've got assholes of the week. I mean, earlier this week, before everything kind of blew up, I had been making phone calls to the People's Party of Canada, the PPC. I'm sure you saw me and all my cool swastika posts on my Instagram. My stories was lighting up, and everyone's probably thinking, what in the actual fuck is going on your social media? It just went from normal to crazy. But we're having an election in Canada, and I obviously, if you haven't unfollowed me already, if you don't like my political opinion, I mean, it's a political opinion. You can have a conversation with me about it like adults, or you can unfollow me if you don't like it, if it's in your face. Like, I don't care. My asshole of this week, because there's got to be an asshole every week. Oh, one's making it 2 weeks in a row. There's two assholes of the week. Like, the whole PPC party has been like, it's like, fuck. They have like, with their zero chance of winning at the end of the election. The funny thing is, the PPC will start and end in the same way, as losers. So my asshole of the week this week goes to Maxime Bernier, Canada's favorite separatist and white fucking nationalist asshole, Maxime Bernier. So I want to untip my hat to you, because you're a fucking pig. No insult to pigs. Speaking of pigs, fucking Mark Emery has dodged every fucking phone call, social media request, anything, because, he's speaking for the People's Party, and being in the riding that he's in, he's supposed to talk to, constituents are supposed to talk to people in their riding, calling and calling and calling and calling and leaving messages for Mark Emery. Does not want to answer any questions for the people. Like, what are you going to do if you have a news conference, brother? Are you going to leave? Go hide behind your bong, I guess. Or there's another People's Party constituent from London, Ontario, just putting a crap stain on the city. A big, giant pothead who's literally never, ever, ever, ever sober, who's under investigation for being inappropriate and sexual inappropriateness with underage women and luring and grooming of women. All this on CBC News and more, like right off the internet. These are people we have running for this amazing party that's basically a white nationalist party. So if you vote for them, please don't vote for me or my podcast, or don't listen. Because I won't even debate that with anyone anymore, because it's just fucked. I won't. There's a special berry farm just outside of town that won't answer any calls either. Speaking of assholes, I asked them if they had any white Suprema Crisp apples in stock. They didn't know what I meant. They said they were fresh out. And then I asked what their interest was with a white nationalist party. Done. Banned. Hilarious. So, speaking of assholes, my live, this is me, I'm the asshole right now. My live is going to go live in the first weekend of October, because before that, I am actually going to do a few podcasts with some other people. They're going to put my silly old ass in the hot seat. And I'm going to answer some tough questions, I think. Not like when Rob put me in the fucking hot seat last week and asked me what it was like to be penetrated. Holy fuck. Like, that might be the most difficult question. But according to one of my girlfriends, fair, definitely fair. That might be one of the most difficult questions I've ever answered in my entire life. And I was fucking literally embarrassed. I'm pretty sure you probably heard that in my voice if you listened to that. Podcast and its craziness. But honestly, I will be doing my first live the first weekend in October to just kick off that spooky season. And it's going to be an Ask Me Anything. So probably before that, I'll do a kind of an episode where I kind of fill you in on everything that you probably already don't know. So you can have some like fun, interesting questions. I'll answer the generic shit so I don't like waste your life. You want to ask me something crazy? Go ahead and get crazy. You just know that there will be a moderator there, so there won't be any room for like anything like abuse or craziness. So if you're planning on coming on and being like, hey, I'm gonna act like an Oscar Mayer wiener, it doesn't matter what your name is. You will be kicked off. It'll be gone. I hired a moderator because that's apparently what you do for these lives. You get a moderating person. So if you want to find out more about that, you can find out more about it on Twitter, where I'm usually bitching at political people, but you can find out about my podcast too at Tanya Candler on Twitter. You can find me mostly on Instagram at 21st Century Rocker Mom Podcast. That's where you can follow me on there. I am there most of the time. You want to listen? You want to listen to this podcast? You're going to find me on Anchor FM. There's a link at the top in my bio. And Anchor will take you to all the streaming platforms. You can find me anywhere. I mean, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever you're listening to right now, stick to it. It's working. And also all the episodes getting uploaded onto YouTube, with this one being no exception. Checking out YouTube too. Checking out some antics. Still working on music. And maybe a few things that are on film too. But we'll talk about that later. But anyways, Ask Me Anything is coming up. I'm really excited to answer all your questions. I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm excited that I could actually be with you this week. Thank you to the power of, pharmaceuticals and doctors and meditation and grounding oneself and things like that. But I hope you are doing well personally. I hope you are taking care of yourself in any which way you can. And I will be back with you next week for another episode of your favorite 21st Century Rocker Mom Podcast. I found myself some makeup that I'm thinking of buying here because it's like semi-permanent makeup. I'm going to talk about that next week. I'm going to see if I can order it and maybe try some, and let's see what happens. But I love you guys, and I will see you next week. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Get back at her. Pitter patter. Hustle hard. I love you. Bye. Peace.